can have. And I think too often we try as marketers, as brand people, as artists, or however you identify as, I think too often we try to tweak our branding, tweak our product, tweak our thing to meet an audience, rather than trying to find the tribe, trying to find the audience for our product.
Have you ever wondered what a rock star has in common with a successful CEO, or what unites leaders across every industry and art form? Welcome to the Art of Connection, where we dive into this question and uncover the secret ingredient of success: the ability to connect with your audience. It's not about numbers though. It's creating a meaningful, powerful connection. And it's this connection that shapes outcomes, influences careers, and makes a lasting impact. So strap in and let's figure out how we can connect with our audiences in the art of connection. Awesome. Well, hey, welcome back to the Art of Connection, where we help you build bridges and not walls with your audience. I'm Isaac Stone, and today I've got on Issac Farrar. He is a writer, director, producer with a decade-plus experience in the film, video, and production industry, working with companies like Nickelodeon, MTV, Fox News, and actually a couple of churches doing production management. And he is kindly given us some time. Currently, he is doing script coverage. And I also forgot to mention he's an amazing dad, husband, and he's also mentored me a bit, so he's got that going too. But anyway, he's currently doing script coverage right now and is helping faith-based filmmakers to kind of communicate better and just write better material to land with whatever audience they're targeting or they're wanting to communicate with. And I thought, who better to have on than somebody who's like literally helping other people. So with that said, I'm really hoping to dive deep and that you can get some amazing insight on how you can better connect with your audience, whatever it is. So did I miss anything, Isaac?
I think you covered a lot. That was made me sound really good. I should have you write my resume. Like, geez, Louise. Thank you.
I'm actually not gonna lie. I usually I stalk anybody I invite on. I stalk them on LinkedIn a little bit, try to find like an about me section on their website. I had a really difficult time finding like a single block of copy that just kind of like put together your career. And I'm like, I'm just gonna look through his like experience, because you have like 26 work experiences on your LinkedIn. Yeah. So I was able to piece together something.
Yeah, it's funny because you talk about you're doing the art of connection with your audience, and I've done so much of that for other brands, and I've just been awful at it for myself. Like it's been like to your point, like with what you just said, I think that's something that's been so hard for me is that I've worked in the social media marketing space for a long time, connecting people with shows and things like that, whether it be like you mentioned with churches, nonprofits, or even with major networks. And it's like I go to do it for myself, and I just have no desire to like be good at it. Like I don't know. So that I will say, like, even for you, a lot of the stuff that you're doing has been great, because it's like I'm like, oh man, I've wanted to make that kind of video like on social for my own brand, but it's been so much harder to do it solo. Like doing it for other people is easy, but for me it's been hard. So.
No, well, hey, I've lured you into a situation where now you're going to be on video.
I know it.
You're going to be talking, and then, bro, you can share any of this. Yeah. So what's it?
Yeah, trapped.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, man, thank you again so much for coming on. If you can see behind, Isaac is in California right now. I grew up in Oregon, and he's got like pine trees behind him, and so it's just
the mountains.
Like my heart
for sure.
Going.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, you're doing script coverage currently right now. That said, you've been about a decade plus working in just kind of, anything that has to do really, I think ultimately with like visual media is like the final product that most of the stuff you've done. So tell me about, how did that get started? Yeah, did you have a passion for like kind of maybe more of the technical aspect, like you wanted to make a really cool picture,
Yeah.
or like yeah, just like yeah, tell me about kind of where that started.
Yeah, where it started. So I think growing up as a kid, always loving, movies and television and getting sucked into that world. So I wanted to get into that. But I grew up in a small town in Northern California, and there was no production outlet. I mean, we were near Sacramento, and there was some stuff happening in Sacramento. But even then, my age is the digital transition. So, when I was in junior high and high school, there was no film schools. Like there was two, three, like there wasn't a lot of production schools, there wasn't a lot of outlets. And then by the time I got to college age, by the time I got to that age, then they started getting very trendy and they started breaking out. But you weren't prepared for it. It's like by the time I got to that age, it wasn't like, oh, for the last 4 years in high school, I had been like, oh, you have a passion for this thing, like let's grow you into it. It's kind of like I actually started doing graphic design at 19, 20 years old because that was the only thing that seemed accessible. Everybody was kind of doing it. There was a lot of need for it. My dad owned his own company. 2008 recession happened, and so he was transitioning from doing new construction to doing service work. And so I kind of got into the idea of branding and marketing and trying to build out a graphics package for him and branding package. And I was just brand new to that. But it was like, oh, this is a job. Like I could make this a job, and I don't have to do construction, which is what the other side of that job was. And I was doing a lot of that. And then my
Yeah.
wife and I got married really young. We got married when we were 20, and so there was already like an instantaneous like I've got to figure this out as a job too. And so it took a minute. I tried film school. And in Sacramento, and I tried doing that. It was really expensive, so I dropped out of that. And then
You completely lost your opportunity for a career in film,
yeah,
right?
I mean,
I'm just
basically,
kidding.
no, yeah. Well, it's interesting. So the thing I've always said about film school, if anybody is watching and they're wondering and they're on the brink, I've always said is the number one reason to do it is community. I think that I know too many people who have gotten work out of it, but it isn't because of your
Yeah.
experience. It's because of just people that you met, and I've
Yes. Yeah.
my one of my first bigger video production jobs was working at Fox 40 News in Sacramento, and our local news. And I remember sitting in an editing bay with like 10 other editors and everybody talking about what college they'd graduated from. And then I had been
Yeah.
quiet the whole time, and they finally looked over at me and said, "Hey, where did you go to school?" And I was like, "Well, I dropped out of the school that a lot of them graduated from, and the Art
Nice.
Institute in Sacramento." And they got quiet and weird because we all had the same job, we all had the same pay, and I didn't have. Now I will say this, like, and I know me and you, we've talked about this on the side, but like, I got that job because I was doing broadcast at my church, right? I was volunteering on the weekends doing live
Yeah.
broadcast, and that was actually what stood out on my resume because I did put that in my resume. And so,
Yeah.
I think experience in general is ultimately the winner, and if you can have a long term experience in anything, that's the big winner. And so, yeah, that was kind of what got me into it. Um, I would say that I've always kind of had a love for it, and I think to your theme of your podcast, I think is a part of that. I think I love how I feel when I watch certain things. That emotional
Yeah.
ride that you go on, whether it's excitement, whether it's sadness, whether it's joy, whether it's laughter, whatever that is. I've always loved that feeling. I love that feeling that you can do even in a corporate setting, watching something, or even if it's individual, how you can come together, right? Even I mean,
Yeah.
even in the marketing space, because I have spent some time in the marketing space, so it's kind of fun because I can talk about both sides of that to your audience as well. But I would say that like what's interesting about the marketing space even is you look at like a Super Bowl commercial. Everybody has their favorite Super Bowl commercial. We might have all watched it separately, but we all remember it, and we can come together and laugh about it, talk about it. The Budweiser "What's Up," like that thing.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
like you could have all watched that individually, but it resonates with you. That feeling that you get, that power of connection. I've
Yeah.
always loved the idea. I've always asked this question. how can you make a movie like the Jurassic Parks? Like, how can you make something that marks a decade, that marks a generation?
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know the answer, but that's been kind of my pursuit, is like, how can we create something that can actually mark? And I don't know, I think a lot of guys accidentally do it. I don't think George Lucas set out to make something that like marked a generation, but it
Yeah.
did. And I think that that's been kind of my pursuit in a weird roundabout way. So
If you're watching and you're interested in the film industry, kind of whatever part of it like makes the most sense to you, you're most attracted to, just as an encouragement, like Isaac said, film school can be a great networking opportunity, and I'm sure there is lots of educators within various film schools that can help you to educate or help to educate you. But also just know that it's not the option for everybody, and that there is other ways to kind of to find your end. So just want to point
yeah,
that out real quick. And then also I love what you're saying. I think that's something that I think a lot about. I saw a while ago, and it was just kind of talking. It was a YouTuber that does marketing stuff, and she pointed out something I really like, and that it's often your audience will have a lot of similarities to you, and you are,
yeah,
obviously you're working at stuff that's like a lot of the projects that you're maybe working on are meant to kind of appeal to like a pretty like a broader
yeah,
audience. But that said, I think it's still so important that often like the things that other people are going to find the most
yeah,
interesting are the things that are coming from like an authentic place from like within you. And even, to George Lucas, I mean, I honestly, like, if you kind of like think about like, what if Star Wars movie never would have blown up or whatever. I mean, like with the kind of like the world building, the storytelling, all the different things. There's part of me that thinks that George Lucas honestly probably would have been happy.
right,
He would have been happy that he got to make his movie like made, because nobody really just like makes something that like like wide and like whatever and reaching, that it's not coming from some place of like genuine curiosity or like intrigue or whatever.
yeah.
And so yeah, I just kind of want to point that out with some of the stuff that you're talking about there.
Yeah, I
So
like what you said about your audience is yourself. I think that I heard recently even somebody talk about this, but I think that one of the issues that you can get yourself into is trying to connect with an audience and not do something for yourself. Because I think that
yeah,
like I can't create something. Oh, I struggled with this a lot when I was working with Viacom, CBS, and you mentioned like Nickelodeon and some of those that I've worked with. But there were harder projects in there, and a lot of times I got the job and I was able to do those social marketing jobs mainly because I just was able to produce on time, not because I was the best editor for that job, like not because I was the
yeah,
best person for that job, but the reason I wasn't the best person for that job was because it's not an audience that I can lend myself to. Like it's not me.
mm-hmm.
And I think there is an authenticity that you can have, and I think too often we try as marketers, as brand people, as artists, or however you identify as, I think too often we try to uh, tweak our branding, tweak our product, tweak our thing to meet an audience rather than
Mm-hmm.
trying to find the tribe, trying to find the audience for our product.
Yeah,
And I think the best
yeah,
type of connection that you can have is when you're actually just connecting with the audience that the product is for to begin with the brand is for to
yeah,
begin with, and not trying to tweak the messaging to fit a wider audience or you just
yeah.
you I mean, again, film is my world, so that's going to be all of my analogies. But like I think it's the big issue in Marvel. I think one of the biggest issues with Marvel Studios has been that they continue to try to make a wider audience, a wider audience, a wider audience. And I think where even DC has succeeded and Warner has succeeded and will continue to succeed is that they are making a movie, and you can take it and you can enjoy it or you can leave it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that when it comes to connecting with an audience, that's that's the most important, I think, and I've heard that recently where it's like, I don't make a movie for an audience. I make a movie for myself. And then
Yeah.
hopefully it connects with an audience. But we have to trust that within ourselves that we have a voice that people can connect with.
No. Yeah, no, that there's a lot there. That is a pretty big red flag that you like DC movies, but I'll just keep. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, really?
But no,
Is this going to turn into a Marvel versus DC issue here?
yeah.
I'll win out, bro. DC will
Well, I
win
mean,
out.
it's not really a versus thing though. That would like say that there is some sort of struggle.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
All right.
I just real quick, before I move on to the next question, I just have to ask you:
Yeah.
Did you like Black Adam? Like
No.
Black
No.
Adam movie? Okay.
No, there's a
All right, we're
reason
good.
why that movie got dumped. Yeah.
That was I literally cannot like fathom the amount of eyes that movie had to go past before being released to the public.
Yeah.
And the amount of like yeses and okay, we're gonna move forward on this.
Yeah.
Just cannot fathom that. But
Yeah, for real.
anyway, so back to the podcast.
Yeah.
So I would love to. One of the questions I had on my mind, again, what's it? You've been doing this for about a decade. You have a really awesome amount of like kind of and variety in experiences. I would love to hear if there's a particular project that you've like worked on, been a part of, that you or the people that you were working for were like really were hoping that it was going to land well and that it was going to connect. Because sometimes people do create projects and they understand that it's purely just a passion project, and they don't care if it connects with anybody.
Right.
That said, I'd love to hear, is there, within in your decade of experience, has there been any projects that you've worked on that was hoping that it would connect, but it ultimately didn't? And maybe what you learned from that. And then after you get through that hard question, I'd love to do the flip side. And if there was, any projects that did really connect,
Yeah.
or any standout kind of projects.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I would say the not connect one is interesting because I've worked a lot in the digital space. And there's a timing element. I think that, it's like it's one of the issues in our digital age is the algorithm and whether the algorithm likes your content or not. And so I think it's really hard to gauge whether an audience didn't connect or whether the algorithm didn't like it and didn't promote it well enough, because the algorithm didn't think it connected, because again, and again, I don't know how in depth you go on this podcast, but the idea of like YouTube. So I've spent a lot of time doing digital shows on YouTube. The catch though is YouTube wants you to live in YouTube. It doesn't care what you watch. It wants you to live in there, and so it's going to feed you shows or things that it thinks you're going to keep clicking and stay in their app, and watching their ads. And I think that there has been a lot of projects that I have worked on that haven't necessarily gotten the audience that we were hoping for, but it's really hard to gauge because there's times where I have subscribed to YouTube channels it's not actively feeding me updates in my YouTube feed just because the algorithm, thinks that I'm not going to watch it, or I don't know what it is. So I don't know. That's always been a hard thing. So I've had plenty of videos. I have plenty of things that just haven't landed to an audience. We haven't gotten the viewership we were hoping for. And I did a lot of work for a brand. So a lot of the brands that I've worked for, you mentioned like Nickel and MTV, those were under a bigger brand. It was Viacom, CBS. It's now called Paramount Global. They own all of those companies, and that's why it looks like I've worked for all these big companies. In reality, I worked for one company that did work for all of those, and so I did a lot of work for those. But and so the only reason I clarify on that is because I've worked for a lot of those different brands in that digital space. And, some of those videos just didn't land, and you don't, it's so hard to know why it worked and why it didn't. And then we had a couple videos, that worked really well, but was it So what we did in the digital space is we worked a lot with influencers. And
Yeah.
so what they would do is they would put influencers in the TV show, and then
Okay.
we would make digital content with the influencers
Okay. Heard.
to sell the show. And the
Okay.
influencers might have been in an A episode, 2 episodes in the background, right? Like depending on how good of an actor these people
Yeah.
were,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they helped get hits on it. It's surprising how
Okay.
often though that also didn't work, and I say that from the perspective
Interesting.
of like, I think even from the perspective of network marketers, people who are pros at marketing at the highest level, they have huge budgets, and they still just aren't nailing it. And then again, maybe there's something to be said to hopefully encourage an audience here, is that, just because you didn't have, massive views doesn't mean it
Yeah.
didn't work. Right now the
Interesting.
company I do a lot of script development and coverage with, I also help with some of their social media stuff. And I've noticed a very similar deal is we can have a video that has 2,000-3,000 plus views, but we could have another video that has 500 views, but it has way more likes. It has way more comments.
Interesting.
It has way more engagement. And I think it's also, what are you after? I mean, I think
Yeah.
I've always been told in a marketing world, you're after sales. Like that's at the end of the day, you're
Yeah.
after sales, which is engagement. So just having
Yep.
views also doesn't. Hopefully that's not too loud. Sorry. Uh, just having views is not the end all, right? Like it's not. It's not the. I think wanting to try to actually build engagement with an audience, and so if you're only engaging with 5 people that is
Yeah.
buying your product, that's a win
Yeah.
over having
Yeah.
somebody
Exactly.
watch my video 2,000 plus times but never engaged. They didn't follow, they're not subscribed,
Yeah.
they're not going to watch my next video. Those kinds of things, depending on, again, it depends on who you are that's listening. For me, it's watching things. The landing well, I've got 2 videos that have landed really well, and both have a little bit of a story. One particularly that I'll share is, I have a video on YouTube called The True Horseman, and
Okay.
it's a documentary short that I made a few years back, and I would love to redo it, but basically the story is this: I was working for a church at the time, and my pastor was writing a book, and so he was writing a book centered around the parallels between discipleship and horse whispering. And so we went out to Diamond Cross Ranch in Jackson, Wyoming, and we got to spend a couple of days filming this professional horse trainer who's now a good friend of mine, Grant Gallier, and him and his wife own Diamond Cross Ranch. Her great grandfather homesteaded this ranch, and it's stayed in their family. It's beautiful. But so we filmed 2 days worth of content, and
Okay.
the book never got released. No videos. I had literally 48 hours of content that I've had on drives, and nothing came of it. And my wife was like, "You need to do something with that. That stuff's too good. You need to do something with it." So I spent a lot of time watching and figuring, and so we kind of crafted this story, and I made this little documentary short called The True Horseman.
So, hey, wait.
Yeah.
Just super quick. That's definitely a golden nugget right there. Have people in your life that tell you to not just be super disappointed, but do what you can with what you have. No, that's great.
Exactly. That's why.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out to my wife. Yeah, for sure. She's in the background right now smiling. But I would say that, like, yeah, but I also think, even if you have that person or not, like, maybe this podcast is that shout out for you too. And that's why I think the story is very, very cool. I don't know what it's at now. It's like 80,000 views, I think, now on YouTube. And it didn't happen immediately. It was something, because again, YouTube's evergreen, right? It's on there forever. All of a sudden it started getting clicks, and I've got a ton of comments and so many people who are moved by it, touched by it, watched it.
Wow.
Not a lot of subscribers have come out of it. Not a lot of people are watching my content on a regular basis, but that video gets circled around quite a bit. I'll have like a surge every so often of viewership, but it engaged with an audience. It took time. It was lived on the internet for a while, but then an audience got a hold of it and have really enjoyed it. And it's really cool. So that's one of the videos, and then the other video that didn't have as much viewership, but I loved. Again, it's kind of what you're after. Like, what do you? Are you trying to just get a bunch of eyeballs on it, or are you trying to move people? And I got to make a promotional video for a ministry at a church, or at our church in Austin, for the women's ministry, and there was a lot of people who watched that, and not a lot of people, but a handful of people who watched it and were moved, even at times
Yeah.
to tears. Mainly, again, it was the audience, right? So it was mainly females who were moved by it. But
Yeah.
that was a great feeling to be able to make a
Yeah.
marketing tool for people and actually
Yeah.
have them connect with it,
Wow.
even if it was just a small group of people. It,
Come
you
on.
know what I mean? It
Absolutely.
touched
Yeah.
people, and I think, you know what, that's a win. That's a huge win.
Yeah.
So, anyways, long winded
No,
answer.
no, that's so good. I think that is so good, and I think that there's a degree of like realism and kind of managing expectations that I feel like is really highlighted in a lot of what you're talking there, and it's not even just to be like, depressing, or like, just go ahead and, shoot your dreams like they're dying.
Right.
But I think there is something really powerful there of just like, at the end of the day, like, having that real kind of perspective of yourself, what you're actually wanting. And that, like, the thing is, when I go on a date with my wife, like, it's just one person there.
Right.
I'm not in front of like millions of people, but that can be some of the happiest moments of my life. Or, with my son, and he's just one person. That can be, like I said, some of the happiest moments is just connecting with him. And I think it's really important that, like, again, whatever kind of discipline, whatever business that you're in, just realize that, as human beings, like, that's like such an innate part of us, is like community, is connecting. And that, just to really kind of get realistic about what you're actually looking for, what you're actually passionate about. And I think, even like a lot of, with like the story about like with the horse documentary, that I feel like that really kind of speaks to what we were talking earlier about that kind of how I think a big word that I think of is sustainable. And I'm going to try to bring everything around here. I feel like I put out a bunch of ideas, but basically, I think a lot of this kind of comes around this place of sustainability, and it's so much more sustainable when you are showing up as yourself. And we all understand, you've got to pay bills, and I understand, even, if you're maybe a small business owner, if you're launching a startup, if you're a beginner filmmaker, that pressure to like pay bills can like be a lot.
Yeah.
But the thing is it's like, sometimes you just got to figure out how to do that bill part, and you have to figure out how to separate that part from the part of you that wants to connect and communicate
Yeah.
to people, and realize that, like you said earlier about like having, projects that you work on, and then, for instance, like for a while you were working with, the like a Nickelodeon brand, but ultimately you got to a point where you just realized that, like, hey, I can do this, but I'm gonna pivot away from this, because ultimately this is kind of like draining me, and it's not something that's a great fit. And so I think I love so much of what you have to say, Isaac, because I think it hits on being really realistic with yourself, and thinking more about, like, not just like, okay, I'm gonna get perfect at like figuring out how to say something, how to do something, but actually like doing that work to find out a little bit more of who you are. And so
Yeah.
this is definitely, honestly, this is actually a theme that's kind of come up on a couple of the other episodes. But I don't think that, that it can be talked about enough, is really figuring out more of who you are. And that often is like one of the greatest keys to
Yeah.
being able to connect with people, and do whatever your end goal is, whether it's converting to sales, whether it's creating viewers, or creating community, or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love that, man. So
Yeah, I think it's good. I think, I heard a guy once say, find your tribe. It's keeping it in the marketing vein. I think that's a big
Yeah.
part. I heard a marketing guy say once, front of mind awareness. Something that you're
Mm,
thinking about on the front. Those are all things. Those are all stats that are hard to quantify into like dollar
yeah.
bills, but they will ultimately turn into dollar bills, which I think is the sustainability that you're talking about. And then on a
Yep.
personal level, from a freelance, again, your audience is probably going to end up being kind of wide with this podcast. So the other side of that I would say when it comes to sustainability is I heard an actor recently give this story and this analogy where he said, "Don't go into an audition doing what you think they want. Go like
Mm,
what is it that you have to offer? Go in there and
yeah.
give them that, and then if they pass on
Wow.
you, they pass on you, and then hopefully you can get the next thing. But then you're again being that true to yourself. I think that if you can
Yeah.
build, we're in a social media age right now where it's all about self brand and how you present
Yeah.
yourself on via social media. But really, where that starts is how I view myself or present myself in a relational space like what we're doing right now. And I think that
Yeah.
what happens a lot of times is we focus so much on how we're viewed social media wise, but we
Mm,
haven't figured out who we are in the personal relational space. And so,
yeah.
I kind of opened at the beginning of this talking about my having my hardships with figuring out how to have a social media voice in a personal space. But a lot of that I think is because I'm still trying to figure out who I am in that. And I
Hmm.
have my journey has went from doing a lot of work for a lot of people to then now shifting into trying to have more of a voice and figure out what
Hmm.
my voice is and making sure that the projects that I'm working under or I'm producing myself are ones that I can be passionate about and I can give a lot of myself to, because a lot of
Yeah.
times I'm counting the clock, man. I'm looking, is the clock over? Are we hit the deadline? Here's the project. Maybe that's, man, maybe I'm self-reflecting on your own podcast, but maybe that's why I've been so good at hitting deadlines. It's just like I'm like sitting there going, I got this project in and I got it out, I get paid and I move on, because it's not something
No,
that
yeah.
I'm carrying. I'm not sitting there with the
Mm,
perfectionist mindset just
yeah.
because it's like I was collecting a paycheck. My wife
Yeah.
was in
Yeah.
my wife was a cosmetologist for a while. She did hair, and she had a lady she was working with once tell her, because she wasn't really into it. My wife just didn't care for it, but it paid the bills. It was a nice help.
Yeah. Of
It
course.
was a nice help for us. And this other lady was a pro, man. She was top of the line in our community, and she just told her like, hey, you should not be doing this just for a paycheck. And a lot of that is to your point of sustainability. I don't think
Yeah.
we don't think, you're a young guy. I still feel young, even though the movies that I grew up with are now Turner Classic Movies. I still feel like a young guy. I would say that one of the things that we don't think enough about, you're a young guy with a family too. You got a kid. We don't think enough about sustainability because the bills
Mm,
there's so much pressure there. Um,
yeah.
and even as a company, my wife tried to start a company this last year. She kind of struggled through it for a little bit, and a lot of that came out of a
Yeah.
place of like, but I've got bills to pay. I got to have sales. This has got to turn into sales. This has
Yeah.
got to turn into sales. And it's like, no, we got to get out of that money mindset and get
Yeah.
more into the community mindset, into the relational
Yeah.
mindset. And I think
Yeah.
that's what sells movies. Star Wars works not
Yeah.
because it's great films. It's because it created a community of people who
Yeah.
wanted to be a part of it, and then they buy into
Yes.
it. And I think that goes across the board, whether you're marketing for a business or you're trying to tell a movie or a story in television. Is
Yeah.
that if you're just trying to make money and get sales, it might work, but it's gonna be the trendy thing. It's gonna be the viral thing. You're gonna have highs, big highs. You're gonna
Yep.
have real big lows. But that
Yeah.
sustainability word, I think, is so powerful and it's so key and it's so great. I think you being even at, and again, not to highlight your age on this podcast, but I do think it's important. I think it's something that's impressive.
Yeah.
Is that I don't think that we think about it a lot. I didn't when I was in my 20s. Like I'm just now going crap. Like I didn't put in the effort. I saw a meme once that was like, it was like this crying baby. Like when you realize that you didn't buy a house into the 2008 recession when you were in third grade. Like that's the rest of the meme,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like this third grader crying. It's just like. But
Yeah.
it's funny how I feel like our age now. Like I'm getting into my 30s, and it's like I feel that way, even though it's like I was 18. Like, how could I have done
Yeah.
anything into the 2008 recession? But I didn't have the mindset of the sustainability, especially in this career, because this career
Yeah.
can have, it doesn't matter whether you're in marketing or whether you're in filmmaking, this career can have very, very incredible highs and very lows and
Yeah.
a lot of mundane. The guy that I work with
Yeah.
he has had big, I mean, he just produced a movie with Chris Pratt, right? Like he's got some of the biggest names in Hollywood in his Rolodex. They're going in theaters, movie in theaters. He had one of the last year, 2022. He had one of the biggest movies of the summer on Netflix.
Wow.
And I'm having phone conversations with him, and he's going, am I cut out for this? Like, is this my job? Like, should I find something else? He's had people, this
Yeah.
guy's in his 40s, dude. He's been in the industry for 20 plus years, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And he's got people literally in his corner who are going, should you have a plan B? Like, what else are
Yeah.
you doing? You know? And I think that
Yeah.
in this industry, in production, no matter where you're at in it, there's always those questions and those people.
Yeah.
And so again, I don't want to go too much on a sidebar, but I do feel the urge to also, just to your audience, I mean, know that you're not alone. You know, I remember how many phone calls I've had with him when he's been kind of depressed with me, and I'll get off and I'll tell my wife, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had this great conversation, and she's like, what did he say? And I'll spew all this depressing jargon out, and she's like, how is that encouraging? And I'm like, because I'm not the only one dealing with it. Like, he's dealing with it too. Like, you know, there is a level of like
Yes.
you know, like, hey, he's still, I mean, he's got 2 older kids. They're in high school, and he's made a career out of it. He's paid the bills. Like, I think at the end of the day, like, he has, you know, we're always afraid of that, but at the end of the day, it you know, the money comes in, things are provided for, and we just got to keep going forward, you know. So
No, come on, dude, that's awesome. By the way, like I said, I do have a 1-year-old. I just realized I've had this the entire time. So,
oh yeah,
nice, love that. So, anyway, dude, that is so good, man. That is weirdly hopeful. I will say.
I know it.
Weirdly, that would be a great name for a podcast. I feel like
Weirdly
just, like
hopeful.
somehow, yeah, exactly. Just share really depressing stories that
Yeah.
somehow help the audience to feel like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
So weirdly hopeful.
I think
we gotta do that.
I think that sometimes, I mean, I don't know, for maybe I'm weirdo. For me, when I want to know that it's going to be hard. Like, there's a level of like,
Yeah.
I think, you know, I remember, so the same producer, I've known him for a long time. I met him at church in LA and at a church I was going to down there. And I remember asking him one time, you know, I'm a young kid, you know, you try to go through film school and everything else. And you go, hey, what are you looking for in a director? He was just hiring a director for a movie he was working on. I go, hey, what are you hiring for a director? And like, what do you look for? And I'm thinking like personality type. I'm thinking skill set, like,
Yeah,
and he just simply says, it was in an email. He sent me back one sentence. He just said, somebody who's directed. And I was like, interesting. And so we ran into each other later, and he's like, hey, sorry, that probably wasn't helpful. And I said, no, it was massively helpful. I go, I wish we would tell people that in film school, because honestly, it would make our jobs a lot easier, in the sense there'd be less people out in the field trying to get work if they tell more people that. But I think that what happens a lot is we get into the glam of, and again, I'm speaking more from my career has been in the trajectory of trying to get into the film industry, and it's very glamorous. Like, there's a lot of that glam that's sold with the art of it. You know, we're artists, and it's artistry, and it's like, no, it's not. It's money, and it's a lot of money on the line, and they want people who know that they can trust that can produce a good product. And I said, it actually is very helpful, because now I know I have a goal. Like, I know that, like, I can't, when I get turned down, I can't be surprised or disappointed or now give up, because it's like, okay, I knew this was kind of going to happen. I knew this journey was going to be hard. And now I can embrace that discomfort and actually grow in it, and then hopefully, you know, go from there. And so, you know, his one advice was to have a story, to have content that that they can't not have you direct, right? Like, you're attached to it, that like, this is your, but they have to tell that story. So it's like, you know, that was one of the ways that you could do it. And so it's been interesting because I've been able to do that. I was able to create a story that has gotten a lot of attention, and I've been able to get into doors relationally. It's funny. I had someone, I actually had his business partner ask me one day because he had a daughter who was trying to get into writing, and he's like, hey, what's the door for her? Like, how did you get this job with Darren? And I was like, well, I said, I bugged him a lot. I just bugged him a lot, and I emailed him and I shot him my script and I asked him to read it, and then when he didn't read it, I asked him again. And I basically, like, until he told me, like, bro, you need to back up, like, until, like, which he never did, but I was like, I'll respect someone who says, dude, no, but until you tell me that, it's an open door to just sit there and keep knocking and keep after it. And I think, but I did that because I knew it was going to be hard. I knew that I wasn't going to get a yes. I wasn't going to just walk in with your short film and go, look at this amazing short film. Everyone at my, all my professors loved it. All of my mom really loved this video that I made. It's like, no, like you can't just stop there, because you're going to get a no, or you're going to get someone to ignore you, or worse. The thing I always got was, this is really good. ... Like, so are you gonna hire me? Are we gonna move forward with this? Like,
oh man,
what do you mean it's really good?
Yeah.
Oh man, like I mean, again, coming from a film industry perspective, I've had so many people tell me who make movies say that should get made.
Yeah.
Are you gonna make it? Like, are we?
Yeah.
Are we? And then that's it, So it's until they say, hey, no, that's not for me, which I have had plenty of those too. I think persistence is everything, and getting into. I know a lot of commercial directors, a lot of music video directors that they've made a lot of things on spec. Man, they've directed a lot of commercials on spec. Which, again, if you're new to it, spec is free. That's what spec means. It means you put up your own money to make a commercial or make a music video. I've wrote all my scripts on spec. They've gotten me other jobs, but I've yet to get paid for the 120 pages of work that I put in to make a script. I've yet to get paid for that. I've gotten paid in other ways, and that thing's opened up doors for me to get paid other ways. But I think that those are the kinds of things that in the world of production don't get talked enough about, in my personal opinion. I've just I've went through a little bit of film school. I've went through a lot of film programs, workshops, and things that have been very helpful to me in my career. But the thing that doesn't get talked enough about is how hard it's going to be, and what you're going to have to do to get to where you want to be. And I think you got to have that persistence. I was just talking to my wife about that this morning. Diligent, being diligent, staying after it, and know that it's your time. It's going to come, and
that's awesome, man. There's so much there, and I think it's definitely on your heart. But anybody listening, I just really hope that that is super encouraging to you, and that's real. Like, that's decade plus experience. That's like your life right now. That's you talking to other people who are even further on than you are, and I think it's just if you're looking for a quick, easy fix, probably not going to find it. There's a little bit of just like settle in for the hard thing. But that said, I think kind of something I try to live by is it's probably not worth anything if it doesn't cost anything.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, hey, I got to wrap up on this right here. That said, I'm going to run you through a couple speed round questions. Just give me what you got, and then I'll let you go. That said, real quick, is there anything you'd like to promote for yourself? Anything that you're doing in the near future, or just connect with you on LinkedIn? Yeah.
On LinkedIn, yeah. I'm never on LinkedIn. Instagram, Issac Farrar, and then kind of the fun thing that I would say personally, I've got a bunch of stuff. We've got a bunch of irons in the fire, but nothing that we can announce right now. But I would say the Uprooted Family is something that's kind of a
Yes.
growing brand
Yes.
that my family, we're traveling, we're doing some weird and wild things as a family. We're kind of trying to document it on that, which
Come
again
on.
is a separate deal than what my career is, but it's something new and different for us, and it's
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
No, no, absolutely. Awesome, awesome. No, that's exactly it. That's great to thanks for sharing that.
yeah.
So, okay, so speed round. So normally I save this like for kind of the last cuz it's like a question I like cuz I'm also headed towards the film industry. But what's your favorite movie?
Oh, what an awful question. I knew that was good. When you said
I
film
know.
industry, I was like, that's what's going to happen.
I know.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't have a favorite movie, man. Like
Okay,
I
okay.
don't. Like I have a top 5. I'll say
Okay.
this. Interstellar is in my top 5.
Okay, got
Christopher
it.
Nolan.
Yep.
And then the other one that made me got into filmmaking was Pirates of the Caribbean, the first
Okay.
one. It's
Okay, got it.
it's
Got
not
it.
the best movie, but
Yeah.
it's dear to my heart.
No, no, I feel that. No, and no, I gotta dive into that at some point. No, I love that. I also Interstellar, so good, bro.
Yeah,
The soundtrack just second
yeah,
to none.
yeah,
The point in the movie where for like 5 minutes they're just like hitting a stick together.
yeah.
No, it's and then they go into like massive organ solo. No, it's such a cool movie. Anyway, I
Yeah.
love that. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. What's your least favorite movie?
Oof, that's hard too, because you try to forget those.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know.
how about just because it's coming out this year, the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Okay, okay.
How about that? Oh man, they got some
That is
bad ones. They got some bad movies in there.
bro.
What I just
I
watch?
thought you were family.
House of Gucci. We just turned that off. That was garbage. I
Okay.
didn't even finish that
Okay.
one, and I'm a big Ridley
Fair
fan
enough.
too. So, anyways,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Okay, interesting. Got it.
yeah,
Got it. I guess you're not family then. So
yeah. No,
Fast and Furious. Okay. All right. So I got just a couple more questions.
yeah.
Strangest project you have been a part of?
Oh, I don't even want to talk about it. Like, is that
No,
bad?
no.
Is that bad? I don't know. Okay, I'll say this one. I'll say this one. This one I can't talk about.
Okay.
It's not that bad. I just, I don't like some of them are the brands. They don't represent me
Yes, I.
personally. MTV, the greatest party stories ever.
Okay.
Mainly,
Okay.
it's basically influencers talking about getting blacked out drunk, and then we animated
Okay.
their stories. That was probably that. That was some weird stuff. Weird animations came out of that time. Yeah.
Yeah, what's it? Yeah, that. Yeah, I could imagine on that. I actually saw that, and I'm like, man, that's so interesting. You have like production manager at so and so or such and such church, and then a couple ones
Yeah, I
TV.
know.
I'm like, that's interesting.
It's very interesting, dude. Yeah, there's some I've left off just because of like that exact connection, like church and that. Like you worked on that project. It's like, yeah, it paid the bills.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, what's it? Hey, yeah, if you want to judge anybody listening, have a fun time judging. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so last two questions. What's your favorite song? And then I'll end it on a high note. So
Oh, favorite song. These like all these favorite ones, dude.
I know,
I
I
don't have
know.
I don't think I have a favorite song. I've been listening to a lot of Ryan Bingham recently, so that I would
Okay.
say he's got a couple Weary Kind, and he's got a couple older songs on there.
Okay.
Anything
Okay.
Chris Stapleton,
Oh,
anything Chris Stapleton.
classic.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so last question. What is your encouragement to somebody trying to figure out how to connect with their audience?
Encouragement.
Yeah,
Don't.
boil it down to the one sentence email you got. So
Yeah, exactly. Don't give up when it doesn't work. I mean, it's as simple as it gets. Just keep trying. Figure it out. Pay attention to the details. But adjust. It's like sports for me. It's strategy and it's adjusting. So just because you lost the game, doesn't mean that you've lost it all. And so I think
yeah.
just keep going. Yep.
No, that's awesome. That's where it's at. All right. Well, in that case, I'll let you go. Thanks again so much, Isaac, for coming
Yeah.
on. You have a great rest of your day, man. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Isaac. See ya.